On February 14th, 2025, I had a couple dreams and their warnings. The first dream I had was I was traveling around and I saw that an Indian man that I know, Native American Indian, he was placing chocolate covered fruit in little boxes around town, like the little boxes that are made to look like little libraries with the little glass doors where you see books for free. Instead of books being in there, there was fruit inside these boxes. And he had written on there that they were free for anyone that wanted them. And I was looking inside the box and I began to speak to him about a matter that was going on around me. And he took out and started running and he said, "Hurry, get in your vehicle and get to safety quickly. Hurry." So I ran to my vehicle and just then there were sinkholes. The ground was cracking open and a sinkhole had opened underneath my vehicle. And the front tires were on one side of the crack and my back tires were on the other side of the crack. I somehow was able to get into my vehicle and take off driving without falling into this crack in the ground. And the cracks in the ground just kept getting larger and larger. There were white folks all around me screaming and crying, and their vehicles were spontaneously catching on fire. Their houses were spontaneously catching on fire. They were trying to put the fires out. Police and fire rescue were around. They couldn't contain these fires. They couldn't do anything about the ground cracking open. They couldn't do anything to help people. And I was able to speed off, and that was the end of that dream. Later on that night, I had another dream. In this particular dream, I was with a group of women. I didn't really recognize most of them. One of them was a family member, and they all were trying to decide where we were going to go and eat. We were in what looked like New Orleans, and we have family from New Orleans for several generations back. And they were all trying to decide where we were going to eat, but they couldn't decide. They were arguing amongst themselves. So a lot of places weren't available to eat at that particular time. It was kind of like in between lunch and dinner. And a lot of the restaurants closed down and then they would reopen for dinner. So we went out to these dock areas, and out on the water there were like houseboats, but they were restaurants. And we went from place to place, and you'd go inside and they were flooded, and all of the cushions and everything were all squishy and on the floor, and you're like having to step on the cushions and everything to get out so that you're not in all of this heavy dirty water. And we went from place to place and they were all flooded, and these were places all owned by white people. And if you know anything about a lot of the main tourist areas in New Orleans, a lot of those restaurants are owned by white folks. Black folks work in the kitchen, black folks are servers, what have you, but they're owned by white folks. So anyway, all of these restaurant boats were all owned by white folks, but they were all flooded. And so therefore we couldn't get any food there. So we went back onto the mainland, and they were still arguing, trying to figure out where we were going to get something to eat, and we all kind of split up. And I ended up in a place that looked like a hair salon, and there was a beautician there, and she was really interested in cutting my hair. And she was telling me, "Oh, if we just cut it short, and then I can put this gel in it and it'll make your curls really, really pop." And I said, "Why would I want to do that?" And there was an elderly black man there who said, well, you did my hair, but my curls aren't popping. You know, why couldn't you do that with my hair? So I left, and she, I guess, started working on his hair or whatever. There weren't many people inside this place. It was just like the three of us. So I went outside to go try to find the women and children that I was with. And all of a sudden, I started seeing and hearing what sounded like fireworks, except they weren't fireworks. They were machine guns and bazookas and all sorts of military artillery. And it was like martial law had taken over. And there were troops. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them and I could see them firing their weapons. And they were yelling for people to strip their clothes off and move and get on the ground and all of these kinds of things. Well, I took off running, and the people around, it was very chaotic. Everybody was running in all different directions, and most of the people were black. There were a few whites here and there, but most of the people that were running around were black. Most of the people that were standing around looking around trying to see what was happening were white. And I didn't see the majority of the people that I had been with earlier, but I just took off running as fast as I possibly could. And I was able to get away from that scenario. So let me give you my interpretation of those dreams. The first dream is the fact that there will be natural disasters where the ground will crack. There will be flooding. There will be fires. And as you see right now, there's flooding in Kentucky and Tennessee and all of these places. If you all watched my YouTube videos from February of 2023, you will see that I went to the Asbury revival in Kentucky, where they claimed to be having this revival, and it was spreading around, and people from all around the world came there to this revival. When I arrived at that place, the revival shut down. They called the police in. The police had all of us leave the building. And that was the end of the 24-hour a day, round the clock revival. That was the end. Once True Israel showed up, that was the end of the revival. It was a totally fake revival. Earlier in that day, when I arrived in Kentucky, it was nice and warm and sunny outside. I was in short sleeves. And that night when I went to the revival, it was bitterly cold. It was so cold and windy. It was the strongest wind. And it was because the Father was not in that place. The Father was not in that place at all. It was just singing and hand holding and white people singing and performing. There's no revival coming. There's no revival coming. So that's that dream. The second dream that I had was of martial law and chaos and weapons being fired in New Orleans. So I know a lot of y'all are there or going to be there for Mardi Gras, which is nothing but an evil carnival festival. It has nothing to do with the Most High. And this is a warning. I would not be going there if I were you. I would be seeking the Most High's face, because he is judging these places. The Father is judging Kentucky and Tennessee right now. I told you all when Hurricane Helene came through, there wouldn't be any help. There wouldn't be any rescuing you all. There wouldn't be any rebuilding and restoration. There will be no revival. And Louisiana, New Orleans is known as the Big Easy, one of the cities of sin. And all that happens during Mardi Gras is debauchery, drunkenness, and any and all manner of sin. Stay away from these places. Stay away from these places. Aside from the fact that rituals are happening all around you, sacrifices are happening all around you as well. Don't be one of the sacrifices. That's it, and that's all.